following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
We are full of pride. We're really, really full of joy of what has happened.
find out why her visa's been revoked and
whether they are fostering an environment which supports British values, which is uniting people rather than allowing sectarian politics to rip them apart.
Suella Braverman will not be silenced. Plus,
sorry, please. You are not welcome here. Even if this is Qatar, this is our country. You are not welcome here.
well, FIFA are apparently going to vote to ban Israel from football. I am hoping to talk to Avram Grant, Chelsea and Israel legend, footballing manager, very, very shortly. And
Islam, my friends, is indeed evil.
This man, remarkably, is now the leader of the Netherlands, OK? Is the EU on the brink of collapse? Also,
just the lack of empathy that I find hard to believe for people that have... Imagine how desperate things have got to be to jump in a dinghy.
Well, I mean, find out what else Gary Lineker's banging on about now. On my panel this evening, it is political top dog John Sargent. We've got apprentice finalist and entrepreneur Joanna Jarju, commentator and broadcaster extraordinaire Alex Armstrong, and I will tell you what caused this. Oh, no, I won't. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Well, apparently not everyone has the right to live in Britain. Next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. I'm Sam Francis. A look at the headlines this evening. The bodies of 3 people who were kidnapped by Hamas from a music festival on October the 7th have been found by the Israeli military in Gaza. The Israeli Defence Forces confirmed the 3 bodies were discovered overnight from intelligence they say was gained by interviewing captured Hamas fighters. Among the 3 hostages was 22-year-old Shani Luk, whose twisted remains were photographed on the back of a pickup truck. Israel thinks about 100 hostages may still be alive, while another 30 are thought to be dead. Meanwhile, a terrorist who stabbed a stranger to death in an attack motivated by the conflict in Gaza will spend at least 44 years in prison. Ahmed Ali Alid had already tried to kill his housemate before roaming the streets of Hartlepool and repeatedly stabbing grandfather Terence Carney last October. The 45-year-old is an asylum seeker who claimed to be from Morocco. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says his conviction exposes what she's called an alarming catalogue of failings in the Home Office's handling of his asylum claim. Well, we've heard today that a teacher convicted of having sex with 2 schoolboys, becoming pregnant by one of them, was described as a predator by the judge. Rebecca Jones was found guilty of 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. She denied having sex with 1 schoolboy and claimed a relationship with a second teenager began once he had left school and after she had been sacked. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and that she was flattered by the teenager's attention. The 30-year-old will be sentenced in July. The Chancellor has admitted that he can't promise that taxes will definitely fall under a future Conservative government. However, Jeremy Hunt insists the economy has turned a corner and the people, he says, will feel the benefit if the Conservatives win the next election. He's also repeated his intention to scrap national insurance altogether if it's affordable, although Labour says it could lead to higher borrowing, higher taxes on pensioners or the end of the state pension. Speaking in London this morning, the Chancellor accused Labour's Rachel Reeves of resorting to what he called playground politics.
When it comes to Labour policies on jobs, welfare reform and tax, the difference, if they are elected, will be profound and damaging for every family in the country. Labour like to criticise recent tax rises, thinking people don't know what caused them: the furlough scheme, the energy price guarantee and billions of pounds in cost of living support. But Labour supported those policies, which is why it is playground politics to use those tax rises to distract debate from the biggest divide in British politics today: what happens to the tax burden next?
Jeremy Hunt there speaking this morning. Well, tonight there's still no word on how long residents in South Devon will have to boil their water. That's after a parasite got into supplies following possible contamination from cow manure. There are now 46 confirmed cases of cryptosporidium, according to health officials. It means cases of the diarrhoea-inducing bug have more than doubled in less than 24 hours. More than 100 people have also reported having symptoms. And finally, Sir Paul McCartney has become the UK's first billionaire musician. The Sunday Times Rich List says the 81-year-old's wealth has risen by £50 million in just the last year. It's reportedly thanks to his 2023 tour, the increase in the value of his back catalogue, and Beyoncé covering the Beatles song Blackbird on her latest album. That's the latest from the newsroom. Another update at 10 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Why haven't we already deported the Palestinian student who said this?
We are full of pride. We're really full of joy of what has happened.
Well, she was apparently proud of Hamas doing this. And, of course, much more on October the 7th. She made her comments the day after the horrific attacks. She made the comments on October the 8th. Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman revoked her visa. She's a guest in this country, studying at Manchester University, enjoying the rights and way of life that we have on offer here. And now she's whinging and moaning about the fact that she's had her visa revoked. So going on national television and saying that she and everyone around her was full of joy at the news that Hamas terrorists had raped, murdered, killed babies, taken hostages and slaughtered Jews. She claims that her views are being misrepresented. Here she is, ironically, playing the martyr.
My voice is being suppressed and I'm being censored for simply standing in solidarity with my people who are being genocided currently in Gaza. I did not expect the Home Office to take such an egregious decision in revoking my student visa based on my public statements that simply express my support and solidarity. I think it's an outrageous claim that the Home Office is making by deeming me a national security threat. I'm a 19-year-old who has done nothing but go to school and advocate for social justice.
I stand before you today having lived the repercussions of speaking up. The Home Office has cancelled my student visa because I spoke up against genocide.
OK, so she says that she's lived the repercussions of her actions. Well, she's not lived them, has she, if she's still here? We are importing people with absolutely horrendous views. I mean, one asylum seeker was convicted for wearing a Hamas headband at a rally. This has been going on for a long time, though, right? Now, a warning in advance here, a warning in advance for the language in this clip that I'm about to play, but it's important to know that this stuff exists. Here is a clip of people driving around a Jewish area saying, F the Jews, and rape their daughters. So, well, I mean, that is obviously what Hamas actually did, isn't it? Unfortunately, news broke in the last couple of hours that Israel has recovered the bodies of 3 hostages in Gaza. 3 innocent people who were snatched by a terrorist death cult and held hostage for months, having goodness knows what inflicted upon them, presumably in some cases. Just a few hours before that, news broke here in Britain that an asylum seeker, Ahmed Ali Alid, who killed an elderly British man at random in the street in revenge against Israel for moving into Gaza, and tried to kill another man for converting to Christianity, was sentenced to 45 years in prison. There is a lot of this kind of mindset going around at the moment. And unfortunately for that Palestinian student in Manchester who had her visa revoked, the fact is that you do not get to live in our country and enjoy all the nice things that it has to offer, enjoy our way of life, if things like this make you feel like this.
We are full of pride. We're really, really full of joy of what has happened.
Goodbye. Good riddance. Right then, it's time to get the views of my panel this evening. I'm joined by former BBC and ITV political chief is John Sargent. I also have apprentice finalist and entrepreneur Joanna Jarju, and commentator and broadcaster extraordinaire Alex Armstrong. Alex, I'll start with you. Is it time that we deported this woman? Why is she still here?
It's totally repugnant what she said, isn't it? I mean, it's vulgar. What really strikes me is that it's taken, well, first of all, it's taken a little while for the Home Office to act on this. I think these comments came out on October the 7th, actually, the day after, October the 8th. So it's actually been quite a long time for justice to be served. But frankly, language like this being broadcast on the mainstream, which I'm totally fine with because I think it exposes the view of these people, is becoming more commonplace. And what it's doing is radicalising more people, as you just showed on that clip, of those people driving around saying those also repugnant and vulgar things.
Yeah.
It's giving leeway to these radical people to say this is acceptable, this is OK, and the Home Office should be taking this tough stance. And I'm glad and I hope she does get deported.
Yeah, I mean, look, Joanna, I suppose that there is the argument that she's saying that it was revoked, her visa, on the grounds of it being security risk, her being a security risk. The Home Office has now pushed back a bit on that and said, oh, it wasn't that, it was the fact that she doesn't serve any good, basically, to Britain. Where are you on this?
Well, I think that revoking her visa might be a bit too far when we think about other stuff that's also said, and when we think about things that are said by the Israeli government themselves and ministers, you know, talking about fighting human animals and erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth, and completely rejecting a Palestinian statehood, which I know that a lot of the time the question is always asked, does Israel have the right to exist? So, for argument's sake, if somebody from the Israeli military in one of these viral videos that we've seen online, you know, gloating about killing Palestinians, happened to have a student visa and came here, would we treat them exactly the same? And I just think that, you know, I'm not kind of condoning any of the stuff that she has said. I think that it's completely wrong. But whether it kind of goes to the extent of actually saying that she might be a security risk, which I know that you said that has been disputed, but to say that she's not allowed to live in this country when actually, when you think about situations like the Russia and Ukraine war, a lot of people, you know, have actually sat on national television and said things like, well, you know, Ukraine shouldn't be moving closer to NATO.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's... But one thing I will say, and I think there is a big difference to that, and John, you know, the day after we see live-streamed footage of people being slaughtered in their own homes and people being raped and cut to pieces and all of this stuff, to then go out on the street just the day after and say to the cameras that you feel joy about that. Why would we want that person in Britain? If we had a choice about it?
That's not the issue, though. The issue is, how was she allowed to come to this country? What were the terms in which she agreed to come and the terms that the government agreed? In the old days, the Home Secretary could just simply say, you're off. But now, because of judicial review and the fact that the Convention on Human Rights is part of our law, what you can't do is just sort of say, I know what I'll do, I don't like that, she should go. We say, wait a moment, but we live in a country where law is very important to us, process is very important to us. Let her have the hearing. If they accept her right to appeal, because they say there's no formal right to appeal, but there is judicial review. and I'm sure the lawyers have gone through this and realised...
What would you like to see, though, John?
What I would like to see on a personal level is a proper hearing.
Yeah,
and saying, wait a minute,
Surely, John, the Home Office...
but hold on a moment. You may think it's odd and strange for me to say, would the law be okay if it was put into effect?
In a Hamas attack.
No, of course I'm not in favour of that. It's an appalling thing to say. But people say appalling things all the time. The question is, what do you then do with the person in this situation? As far as I'm concerned, that's the moment, because we dislike what she said so much, that's just the moment when we have to make sure that our system is fair. Because whatever else we're trying to do in this country, we're trying to be fair.
That's
to say, oh, well, the Home Secretaries decide.
That's exactly my point, though, because it's like people say stuff all the time, and it's very convenient now because obviously she's in the Palestinian side, but then it could potentially set a precedent when it comes to other people who say stuff.
But Joanna,
so
Hamas is a prescribed terrorist organisation, right? It's not like you're supporting, I don't know, another country at war. They are a prescribed terrorist organisation that she's advocating for and saying the day after terrible actions by Hamas took place in Israel, that people were raped and murdered.
Can I also just say at that point,
she feels as a
pride and joy. We don't want those people here.
This is a vital point, which is at the point she said that stuff, Israel hadn't responded.
Exactly.
Israel hadn't even responded. So it was pretty much literally just celebrating the atrocities that had happened.
She may well have not... Look, we don't know in detail how much she knew of the attack, how many people had been killed, how many women had been raped, what actually went on. I don't know. But the point is, she felt, look, I'm here, I'm allowed to say what I'd like, I live in a free... I've come to a free country, I'm not bound by this.
This is where the judicial review will be important. This is where the judicial review will be important, because she's talking about resistance as well within that. So obviously if she goes to a court of law, they will dissect exactly what she said in terms of her words. Obviously in the grand scheme of things, we all know that she's talking about Hamas, but actually they'll look at what she actually said and whether that warrants...
This is another point for me, which is that I'm sorry, but I think people come to this country and they take the absolute mick.
No, but they don't just take arbitrary justice. Otherwise, why do we have our country at all? Our country is based upon law and process. If you say, by the way, you can come here, but wait a moment, you can't come here because you don't like what you just said, out. We're not a joke country.
I'm sorry, we're not a joke country, but I think it is a joke if somebody comes to this country on a student visa, says that they take joy in Manchester, which has got one of the highest, most densely populated Jewish populations of anywhere in the country outside of London, and can stand there freely around and say not just her but everyone around her takes joy in a Hamas attack, we cannot get rid of that person.
All the more reason to be careful in a case like this. All the more reason, because it's so much against what we believe.
I will say this, though, John. The Home Office have good lawyers. They would have looked at this case in detail and would have said, I think we will win. I think we'll win if this goes to court. But we also need to start showing the British public we are serious about deporting people that don't agree with our values here, because we have been very, very tolerant. And the tolerance that we get, I tell you what happens, we get Ahmed Ali in Hartlepool murdering people. This is what happens when we show we're too tolerant. People start to get radicalised.
Is it about values, or is it about if somebody is actually potentially a threat? Like, is it actually grounds
But we need to show the world that we are not going to accept...
We're not. Everyone, can I just make one point very clear? The old national security risk thing was something that was put out by her, which she said that was why it was revoked, which I understand that would be, well, quite a high bar, OK?
Let's see what the courts decide.
But what they are saying is actually, apparently, they have revoked it on the grounds, as you would revoke anyone who you could potentially do with a student visa for just being deemed to not be a benefit to British society.
She came here on a student visa to study, to learn. Stick to what you're here to do. Study, learn. You don't have to go and make massive protests and upset people.
Patrick has said she was here to enjoy the advantages and all the other things that come in Britain. Life in Britain is, I'm afraid, this is very important to me.
Life in Britain.
I can't go around advocating for Nazis.
Can I just say one thing? I don't think that the argument is about whether what she said was right or wrong. I think it's about whether it warranted deportation or her visa being...
If I go to Germany and start advocating for Nazis, I'll be...
We're going to have to move on. I think most people in this country would not want someone who feels a sense of deep joy over Hamas.
But most people don't. We don't have lynch law. We don't have people shouting at each other. That's it.
As anti-Semitic attacks in Europe are increasing, Suella Braverman is demanding more action from the government.
Whether they are fostering an environment which supports British values, which is uniting people rather than allowing sectarian politics to rip them apart.
Yeah, some more exclusive footage with the former Home Secretary there. But is it too little too late? OK, has the fallout to Hamas's terror attack on October the 7th proven that multiculturalism has failed in Britain? We're going to have a debate on that. Plus, it's all kicking off in Taiwan. I love a parliamentary punch-up. We need a bit more of that. But up next, look, this is apparently happening now. Israel could be booted out of world football. That's the demand of the Palestinian FA. And apparently it's also going to be, well, it is going to be a big debate for us, but I'm just going to announce that apparently we do have quite a special guest on this. It's Avram Grant, who's the former Chelsea manager and the former Israeli manager as well. So he's also going to be involved in this conversation. So make sure you stay tuned.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
Yes, has common sense won the day at the NHS? Yes, so someone seems to have woken up and realised people are more interested in the NHS making sick people better than calling them by the correct pronoun. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins is making changes to the NHS constitution, which will see phrases like chest feeding and people with ovaries outlawed. Even Keir Starmer is getting on board.
To get the clarity, is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she, of course, is right about that.
So do you owe her an apology?
Well,
yes. Do you owe her an apology? This has been somewhat ongoing. But actually, Christys, the NHS constitution, my understanding is it has to be changed or ratified by the Health Secretary every 10 years.
Yeah.
So it feels like this is coming more from the government and not actually coming from the NHS at all.
Oh, you mean because it's just time? It's just like it's time to have a look at the lease sort of thing. The 10 years are up.
But it's just that also a lot of NHS leaders are kind of saying, oh, no, we should not do this or there's going to be complications. It feels like it's not coming. It feels like the NHS is still institutionally captured and this is the government going, finally, no, enough is enough. Sex matters.
Right, yeah. So, OK, so I said there was nothing Rishi could do. I mean, this helps, doesn't it? It's time. It's time. That was fun watching that. I'd like that to have gone on a bit longer. I think the bit I was really going to enjoy was when he did or didn't give his apology. That's what I'd like to
Well, also, I think they should have just brought Rosie Duffield in. We've got Rosie here!
Oh, fantastic. Yes, like a sort of 90s Cilla Black.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Matthew, tonight, I'm Rosie Duff.
Yes.
I'm dry ice.
Surprise. What's the question? Has common sense prevailed?
Well,
yes, I mean, but you say
it's got... That's my fear of it.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Coming up, has multiculturalism failed in Britain? Suella's got a thing or two to say about that. But first, should Israel be booted out of world football? It is time for tonight's head-to-head. So, remarkably, FIFA are holding an urgent meeting in July, can't be that urgent then, but anyway, to decide if Israel should be banned from competing in world football over its continued military response to the October the 7th Hamas terrorist attacks. FIFA President Gianni Infantino confirmed a legal assessment would be held after the Palestinian Football Association, backed by the FAs of Algeria, Iraq, Jordan, Syria and Yemen, submitted the proposal and demanded the governing body stand on the right side of history, as they say. Palestine's FA president, Jibril Rajoub, also indirectly referenced Russia's ban from the sport last year after it invaded Ukraine. He said, how much more must the Palestine football family suffer for FIFA to act with the same severity and urgency as it did in other cases? Does FIFA consider some wars to be more important than others, and some victims to be more significant? But Shino Moshe Zuarez, who is the president of the Israeli FA, responded saying, look, hey, we are facing a cynical, political and hostile attempt by the Palestinian Association to harm Israeli football. So, look, should Israel be booted out of world football at the behest of Palestine and a few other nations? Before we have a debate on this, I'm very pleased to say that we are joined down the line by Avram Grant, who's the former manager of the Israeli national team and arguably better known in this country anyway for being the former manager of Chelsea, took them to Champions League final. Avram, thank you very, very much for joining us. Should Israel lose their status as a world football playing nation?
Should Israel what, sorry?
Should Israel be booted out of FIFA?
You know, I'm in Thailand. I was in this Congress this morning when Jibril Rajoub spoke and the president of the Israeli FA spoke. I tell you first, the target of FIFA is sport. Sport united people, put people together, find a solution. I had by the way, Algeria now against Israel, and I was in my team in Portsmouth, 2 Algerian players. So football comes to united people. What Jibril Rajoub is doing, and I know him personally, yes, I know that he is ambitious to be the leader of the Palestinian, and he wants to do it for the football, but this is not my job. This is not my concern. I tell you one thing, I don't like to involve.
Oh. OK. Do you think that it would be potentially a bit anti-Semitic to take this kind of action against Israel, defending itself, or not?
I think that, look, the Jibril Rajoub and others, you see who supported him, of course they don't like Israel, and of course they're against Israel and against the Jewish people. They said it publicly. So I don't need to say that. They say that. What I want to say that sport is coming to united people. If you follow today, and you know I can speak about this because I have a lot of Palestinian friends. Me and my family support the Palestinians, try to help them in different ways, also in Gaza. And when something bad happened to them, we are not happy from this, of course. We are sad that children are dying and all of these things. But we need to remember one thing before I come to your point, that everything started, as you know, before what's happened, because what's happened in 7th of October. That was, you know what it was, you know, the rapes and the murder, and they cut the head of the children and rape a woman in front of their husband, all of this. I didn't heard even one word from the Jordanian or from Jibril Rajoub sorry about what happened 7th of October. You heard from the Israeli president, yes, that he said that if he's sorry about people that died in Gaza. So this is one. The second, they didn't come with any solution. Let's solve the problem. Let's see how we can solve the problem. Let's see how we can live together. Because sport united people. No, you need to ban Israel. And let's say that we'll ban Israel. What will happen to them? Their life will be better. They don't want to, Jibril Rajoub don't want to create anything. He wants just to go against Israel. And I must tell you that I'm very, very disappointed from Jordan, which I was listening to the speech. Again, let's be in the right side of the history. What is the right side of the history? Also, Hitler wants to say that he wants to be in the right side of the history. Why they say that? Why I didn't hear one word to condemn what's happened in 7th of October from there? Why I didn't hear one word, let's find a solution. Let's find a way how to live together. We didn't see it because all the target, we know all the targets.
Okay. Avram, thank you. Thank you very, very much for coming on and short notice. And I hope to talk to you again. It's really strong stuff. And it's actually really good to hear a football manager come out and give, you know, some really honest views. I know a lot of the time it's difficult as football managers. You don't want to necessarily always say what you think. So thank you. We do appreciate it here. That's Avram Grant, though, who's the former manager of Chelsea, amongst many other teams, including, of course, the Israeli national team. But now, going head-to-head on this are the former Tory minister, Paul Scully, and the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah Al-Andalusi. Look, chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Avram was a slightly late edition there, so sorry to have kept you waiting. But, Abdullah, I'll start with you on this. Should Israel be essentially banned from playing international football, do you think?
Well, if we go by the policy opined by members of the British government since 2022, which said that Russia should be banned from football tournaments and sporting activities, and of course it's also banned from Eurovision, then we should be consistent with the principles. If Russia is banned for its aggressive acts against Ukraine, then Israel should be banned likewise for its aggressive and apartheid acts against the Palestinians, just like South Africa under its apartheid regime was universally banned from a number of sporting federations, to make the point that sports should be based on principles of humanitarianism, and these states do not reflect that.
All right, Paul, go on then, your views.
No, I don't think they should at all. I think there's a big difference between Russia and Israel in this. Russia were the absolute aggressors that invaded Ukraine, nothing to do with any prior attacks, as we've seen in Hamas on October the 7th going into Israel. I totally agree with what Avram was saying, that actually football has to bring people together. We need to use sport to bring people together, rather than using this as an extension of that PR war that's going on around the world. Let's make sure that we can bring the two countries together in terms of a ceasefire and bring an end to the hostilities, but not through sport.
Okay. Yeah, Abdullah, I mean, come back to that. I mean, is there any push, at all to, ban Ukraine from sports? Well, no, because the argument, I suppose, will be that Ukraine is defending itself. Israel is responding to the October 7th attacks, no?
Well, firstly, if we just look at the history, Israel actually has been initiating attacks against Palestinians throughout 2023, before October the 7th. There was a bombing raids in Gaza that destroyed over 400 buildings. There was 234 Palestinians killed by Israel, 1,000 injured in the West Bank, not even just Gaza, but in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas as a formal entity. We see that in the Great March of Return, where unarmed Gazans were making a demonstration to go back to the land of their ancestors, located in where it's located in modern day Israel, over 200 of them were shot, despite the fact that they had no weapons on them, simply because they were doing peaceful demonstrations.
Can I ask Abdullah, are you a big football fan?
Sorry?
Are you a big football fan, Abdullah?
I find the World Cup and the Euros quite interesting.
So that's kind of my point. You're not actually that bothered whether or not Israel play football, are you?
I'm bothered about consistency. If you're going to hold Russia to a standard, and Russia argues it was defending ethnic Russians in Ukraine that were being persecuted by fascist Ukrainians, and Russia claims that Ukraine is the heartland of Russian history, like Zionists like to claim Palestine is. So there's a lot of parallels between these two aggressive states.
I'll give it over. I'll give it over to Paul. I wonder whether or not everyone who wants to see Israel banned from Eurovision or banned from football competitions actually is an avid watcher of either Eurovision or football.
Yeah, look what happened in the Eurovision, actually, because when the public had their vote, obviously the juries did their thing, and a lot of protesters did their thing in Eurovision in Malmo. But actually, when it came to the public vote, you had the silent majority coming up there and supporting Israel's right to be heard in that wider context. I mean, nobody wants to see Palestinian citizens like. Clearly, they don't. It's horrible what's going on. But you can't just take selective history that Abdullah was taking there about, listening to some of those 3-hour speeches from Putin and thinking that it's the heartland of Russia. That's absolute rubbish. Russian athletes are going to be allowed to compete in the Olympics under a different flag. We need to let sportsmen do this, but let's not play out what's going on in the Middle East in this wider PR war. It's just
all right, guys. Look, both of you, thank you. I am sorry that we were squeezed. Like I said, we weren't expecting Avram Grant there at the top. I would like to have you both back on it.
We did support bans on sports for apartheid South Africa to protest against the apartheid regime. And in the West Bank, Palestinians do not have the same rights as their Jewish neighbours. Right, that's how Israel treats the Palestinians in the West Bank.
Put a pin in it for now, but thank you very much, both of you. Nonetheless, much appreciated. I'll be both on very soon. Now, right, coming up, Geert Wilders is readying himself for an immigration showdown of, can I just say, epic proportions with the European Union. He's trying to shore up Holland's borders. Will illegal immigration break up the European Union? Can I just say, if you're not aware of Geert Wilders, then you're about to be. This guy is a tour de force. Dutch MEP Michiel Hugoven gives us the lowdown from across the North Sea very, very shortly. Meanwhile, Gobby Gary thinks people who want to control their borders lack empathy.
It's just the lack of empathy that I find hard to believe for people that have. Imagine how desperate things have got to be to jump in a dinghy.
I will reveal that full clip a little bit later on and exactly what he's banging on about. But next, I'll show you what Suella Braverman said when I asked her if the Israel-Hamas conflict had exposed failures of multiculturalism right here in Britain. You don't want to miss that. I'll see you in a tick.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells. A fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up. And we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland, likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours continuing into the evening, dying away overnight. So a dry start to the day on Sunday. A lot of cloud first thing, particularly in the north and the east. But quickly, there are some very pleasant, warm, sunny spells developing through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to be focused towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, this is Patrick Christys Tonight. We are only on GB News. Now, look, Europe has seen a wash of anti-Semitic attacks following October the 7th. Yeah, that was today. A Jewish man was senselessly attacked by thugs for removing an anti-Israel sticker at a train in Bruges, apparently. Well, it's been reported in the Times of Israel that he's since been hospitalised with a broken jaw. And with a 589% increase in anti-Semitic-related abuse showering the UK, scenes like this in London have become all too common.
This is what they want. Don't do that. They don't want that.
OK, so, look, I was thinking, has multiculturalism actually failed in Britain? I'm joined now by my panel. I've got a former BBC chief political correspondent, John Sargent, a former, current political commentator, Joanna Sargent, a political commentator as well, Alex Armstrong. I'm hoping that shortly we are going to be hearing a little bit from Suella Braverman yesterday. But, John, I'll come to you on this. Do you have reservations about whether or not multiculturalism, everything's rosy in the garden there?
No, everything's not rosy, of course, and the battle has to go on all the time. For my generation, it was all about the Holocaust, and once you'd gone through that, when I was 15, I think I went to one of the concentration camps. We were very much part of that generation which would think that anyone who was remotely anti-Semitic was deeply evil. That was just straightforward, good, bad. But every generation changes. Anti-Semitism is hundreds of years old. You've got to keep up the battle. And it's also true of lots of other problems about racial issues and all the rest of it. The idea that, you can just say, we've done that now, we've sorted that. No, you've never sorted out. People have got to keep up the battle and realise that every day, sometimes, you've got to think, wait a moment, this is, in fact, unpleasant. It's racist. We should fight against it.
It's not just anti-Semitism here. I know we're giving a couple of examples, and there does appear to be this huge explosion in it at the moment. But
because of Gaza,
yeah, because of world events, because of what's going on. But Joanna, do you think that multiculturalism in Britain is a success story, or indeed, for that matter, anywhere in Europe? I mean, we're going to talk a bit later on about Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. I mean, someone like him wouldn't come to power if a load of people in the Netherlands did not think there was an issue with their culture.
Well, I think that overall multiculturalism hasn't failed. I think that, people generally do live together, nicely. Obviously, there's extreme elements, but I think that, there's two sides to this as well. It's another thing where there's two sides. For example, with Islamophobia, that's gone up 600% after the October 7th attacks as well. And I think that a lot of the time when we have this conversation about multiculturalism and about integration and assimilation, we talk about, for example, people of the Muslim faith coming in, but it almost seems as if we don't talk about it when it comes to both sides as well.
Do you think, Alice, that some cultures integrate better than others?
Well, yeah, it's a fact, isn't it? We know that's a fact for sure. But let's look at Germany. They released their crime statistics by ethnicity, and per 100,000 people, Algerians, by a massive margin, it's 52% per 100,000 people were committing crime versus Germans at 1.9%. That is an incredible statistic. There's a reason why our government don't want to release those statistics, because they're worried it will cause people to start actually becoming more anti-immigrant, because we know those statistics are there. And so the problem is assimilation. It's a failure to assimilate.
No, but can I just say one really important thing? I think when it comes to assimilation, I think that certain cultures get away with not assimilating. So, for example, with the Jewish faith, you'll have certain boroughs within London where, rightfully so, they want to live within their own community. community around their own shops. But when we have that same conversation about Muslim people wanting to live near, halal shops, then that's a problem. Then they're not assimilating.
OK. Well, we've heard from my panel. Let's hear now from the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. So, as now many people know, I was out and about with her yesterday in Cambridge. This is some unseen footage from that walkabout that I did with her.
They are fostering an environment which supports British values, which is uniting people rather than allowing sectarian politics to rip them apart.
OK, all right. I was hoping for a slightly longer clip there. But anyway, Suella Braverman was basically saying that she was concerned that with some of the protests that we're seeing outside universities or with some of the issues that we're seeing, demonstrations and that on the streets, that the problem is that it is allowing a situation to foster where people who do not share our values or do not have British values or do not actually particularly like Britain, maybe, have a platform to consistently shout about their views, John.
Well, it is a difficult time. There's no doubt that what's happening in the Middle East is polarising opinion across the world. It's making it extremely difficult for us to continue with a sort of straightforward Israel is our ally. There's under terrific strain in terms of politics, with Biden saying they've gone too far, I'm not going to supply them with arms. Britain saying, no, we'll continue supplying Israel with arms, they're our ally. What happens if they're attacked by Iran with missiles and British arms could help them? All these issues there mean that for lots of people, this is a moment where they want to demonstrate, they're showing their feelings, and it's pumped up, of course, by the photographs every night.
Can I just say, as a bit of a, difference to my usual opinion, my stepfather's from Iran. He came to this country, he's contributed here, he's paid his taxes, he works hard, he's raised a family, and he's really settled into our society. And, there's something to be said about people who want to come here and make a good life. But what we're seeing, though, is, unfortunately, a younger generation of people coming here who dislike the West.
Now, that's a really important point, because it's funny you should mention Iran, actually, because I was jogging the other week and some guy who turned out to be from Iran stopped me. We were having quite a good chat. And he said he came over years and years and years ago. And he said to me, this is in Maida Vale, which is near where this Islamic centre is, the Iranian Islamic centre is. And he said to me, you don't know what you're doing in this country. It was his generation that he says came over, and he says the generation after him are radical and hate us. He just said that they hate us and they're not shy about hating us. And it's tricky, though, isn't it, Joanna? Because we've got such a complex web now of people of different cultures, different identities. Maybe it's unreasonable to expect all of them to integrate into British culture seamlessly.
Well, I think it depends, again, what you mean by integration. If you mean leave all of your cultures behind, don't, eat certain foods and then, only have fish and chips and roast dinners. Some people are literally like, leave that behind.
Respect our way of life, don't actually dislike it. Do you know? Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think that obviously anybody who lives in this country shouldn't. I mean, if you hate it that much, I mean, obviously, you're in your right to kind of critique it. I don't think that should be stopped. But if you actively hate it so much, then that is a problem. But what I think is a problem with Suella Braverman is that she stokes a lot of these things. And when you call it a hate march and you put people on the defensive, then you create this dividing line. And I think that is a huge problem where we have politicians who we should respect and who should be beacons of bringing everybody together.
She was Home Secretary.
She's absolutely
when she said this.
She's absolutely not backing down on that, by the way.
I know,
I mean,
but the point about this is when you think of an old-fashioned, what I would regard as an old-fashioned Home Secretary, their job was to keep the temperature down, not increase it, not say, God, look at this hate marches, look at this, look at that.
Exactly.
That was their job. Their job was to make sure as much peace broke out as possible.
I also think her job is to tell the truth, and they are, in my view.
Tell the truth, God.
So coming up, I will dissect and analyse what we learned from Suella's gripping showdown with a communist student last night.
So you have no view on Hamas, and you have no message for Hamas, and you have no
I'm not here to
connection
talk about Hamas.
You're not here, right? So
no,
you don't
have
a view.
Connection to Hamas.
Okay. And so, what's your message? Do you believe Israel has a right to exist?
Yes, OK, some quite revealing answers there. But next, with Geert Wilders readying himself for an immigration showdown with the European Union as he tries to shore up Holland's borders, will illegal immigration actually break up the EU? And is it happening now? Yes, I think it possibly is, so stay tuned for that. Dutch MEP Michiel Hoogeveen gives us his expert insight, and that's next.
Headliners
Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Let's do the Telegraph, and Iranian women are grassing up other women for wearing fitted trousers. Are there no roles left for patriarchal oppressors to actually be men, Jonathan? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're taking all of our hid jobs. It doesn't work.
Oh, that kind of works.
That kind of works, OK.
It's close
right.
to a joke.
The headline is, Iranian women are betraying others to morality police for wearing fitted trousers. So a hardline Iranian militia is hiring women to enforce the country's strict hijab rules, using them to spy on other women and bundle offenders into vans to be taken for interrogation. Now, this is horrible. This is just despicable theocratic tyranny where women are, helping to stomp on the rights of other women. They're despicable snitches, in my opinion. This is not good. This is not good. This is, this is really just an affront to women's rights.
Okay.
And I disagree with it.
Well, just for balance.
Yeah.
I've got to give balance, it's my job. I mean, one of the women here is saying, look, we should intimidate them so they stop going out as if it's Paris or London. And you look at Paris and London these days, Leo, cultural decline, you're like, hey, maybe they've got a point.
No, I mean, I think if you look at Paris and London, would you be able to tell the difference between that and Tehran?
That's another point. But, that's what I was making, and I deplore it and disavow it.
But yeah, basically, women love judging each other.
I've written that.
They do. Yeah. They do. And all patriarchal religions have been maintained and upheld by women.
To be fair,
it's not women. It's not men deciding to go to church on a Sunday. It's women, because the whole system is set up to benefit
women are more traditionally concerned about social standards.
Yeah. The only people who shouted at me to put on a face mask during COVID were the ladies.
It is disturbing because, of course, Iran didn't used to have this. We all see those pictures from the 70s or whatever it is when they're just like, it looks like a Western country.
Yeah.
So it is quite disturbing, especially to have other people snitching and enforcing. That's what I don't like.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, an almighty row has broken out between the Netherlands and the European Union after the new Dutch government promised to opt out of the bloc's asylum rules. Announcing its immigration policy on Thursday, the new coalition said an opt-out clause for European asylum and migration policies will be submitted as soon as possible. Now, that was done, really, to try to fend off a vote in the Netherlands about leaving the European Union. But the European Union has slammed it and said it ain't happening anytime soon. So are we now witnessing immigration finally being the thing that rips continental Europe apart? I'm joined now by Dutch MEP Michael Hoogeveen. Thank you very much. This feels big. Geert Wilders is in power now. He's got his coalition. What's going to happen?
Well, first of all, we're very glad that we finally have a government. And we finally have a government that's taking action on this very pressing issue. It's been one of the top issues for Dutch voters in decades. And nothing has been concretely done in order to reduce the influx of illegal immigration. So there's a lot needs to be done, and a lot needs to be done in Brussels.
OK, but what's he going to do? I mean, this guy wanted to ban mosques at one point. Is he still going to do that?
Well, in the Netherlands, we've been looking quite jealously to the Danish model. The Danish model they have an opt-out for these very stringent rules and regulations coming from Brussels when it comes to immigration. So the Danes, they can put more stringent measures on, for example, family reunification, or on the policies on that they need to learn the Danish language. But this is not allowed under European law. So we've been trying to come up with this opt-out for a long time. So it's good that the new government is now trying to go to Brussels and try to get this opt-out done.
So when the people of the Netherlands go to Brussels and they say, this is what we want, and Brussels says no, which they will, do you have to try to vote to leave the European Union?
Well, the funny thing is, when you talk to Brussels, when you come up with certain proposals, such as getting rid of the veto rights for member states when it comes to legislation, they all cheer and they say, oh, you're such an ambitious European. But when you come in terms of legislation where you say, well, we want to put the brakes on immigration, all of a sudden they say, no, this is not possible. This is not allowed. This is not allowed according to the treaties. So it's very selective, and we don't only see this coming from Brussels, it's also coming from the left politicians.
And the irony here, Michael, and we're going to have to be quite quick with this, is you're not actually really talking about European immigration, are you? This is immigration from North Africa, from the Middle East, from Africa as well. The type of immigration that sees rapid cultural change, yeah?
Yeah, we're seeing this immigration. They arrive on boats in Italy or Greece, and they have been traveling through multiple safe countries. They travel across Europe, across these safe countries. So they're already, in that sense, have asylum, but they see the Netherlands, and in the past also the United Kingdom. You're giving it some more strict measures on your own side. But obviously, we're very attractive as countries. So we're attractive to these migrants, and we're now saying, no, we have a problem with housing, we have a problem with
Exactly. And countries are attractive for a reason. Countries didn't just become attractive overnight by chance. Countries became attractive because people worked very hard to make them attractive countries, and they don't need to just be handed out to everybody who wants to come. There should be some national pride and all of that. Look, thank you, Mikhail. I do hope to talk to you again, talk to you for a bit longer as well. Sorry that it was so short. That's Mikhail Hogeveen, Dutch MEP. Now, next, I explain what Suella's most explosive showdown with the communist student, Fiona Lally, tells us about the pro-Palestine hard left wreaking havoc in this country. There was that interaction, lack of really, at Cambridge University yesterday. The idea reveals some quite astonishing things that happen behind the scenes. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells. A fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up. And we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland, likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours continuing into the evening, dying away overnight. So a dry start to the day on Sunday. A lot of cloud first thing, particularly in the north and the east. But quickly, there are some very pleasant, warm, sunny spells developing through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to be focused towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
This guy not one in there.
This guy wanted it.
But are you you're fast. Go away.
This guy wanted to talk. He approached me. There's something that these protesters don't want you to know.
Hostages be released. Listen, like, why is this conflict happening in the first place? Who is responsible for it?
It's easy to say yes to that. Yeah, the truth always comes out. Plus, this is Britain's migrant hotel king. I will tell you how much money he makes every single day, and
It was 2 weeks ago that people first started to feel sick, and people were contacting South West Water to say, look, the water doesn't taste right.
Water disgrace. Heads must roll over infected tap water, and
it's just the lack of empathy that I find hard to believe for people that have. Imagine how desperate things have got to be to jump in a dinghy.
When will Gary shut up? I've got tomorrow's newspapers tonight with journalistic royalty John Sargent, apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. OK, and what caused this? Get ready, Britain, here we go. It's time for the truth about the student protests next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 10 o'clock. The headlines from the newsroom tonight. Israel's Prime Minister says the deaths of 3 hostages whose bodies have been recovered from Gaza are heartbreaking. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the 3 bodies were discovered overnight, but didn't give details of where they were found. Among the 3 hostages was 22-year-old Shani Luk, whose twisted remains were photographed on the back of a pickup truck. Israel now thinks about 100 hostages are still alive, while another 30 are thought to be dead. Here, a terrorist who stabbed a 70-year-old man to death in the street has been jailed for at least 44 years. Ahmed Ali Alid murdered Terence Carney last October in revenge, he said, for the Israel-Hamas conflict. The court heard the 45-year-old asylum seeker had already tried to kill his housemate before attacking the pensioner. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says his conviction exposes an alarming catalogue of failings in the Home Office's handling of his asylum claim. A teacher convicted of having sex with 2 schoolboys has been described as a predator. Rebecca Jones was already suspended from her job and on bail for having sex with a 15-year-old when she began another sexual relationship with a second teenager, aged 16, and she then became pregnant. During her 2-week trial, the high school teacher told the court that she craved attention and struggled following the breakdown of a 9-year relationship. She did, though, deny the allegations against her. The 30-year-old will be sentenced in July. The UK Health Security Agency says the number of confirmed cases of cryptosporidium in Devon has doubled to 46. More than 100 people have also reported symptoms of the diarrhoea-inducing illness. 16,000 homes and businesses have been told that a parasite got into their water supplies after possible contamination from cow manure. South West Water is now offering bottled water to residents and has also increased compensation from £15 to now £115. Hundreds of Border Force officers at Heathrow Airport are set to strike at the end of half-term in a row over their rotas. 500 members of the PCS union will walk out for 3 days, starting on the 31st of this month. It's expected the strike action will disrupt passport checks for travellers coming into the UK. 2 police officers who took a 2-hour meal break for a kebab on the night of the Manchester Arena attack have been handed final written warnings. Their absence meant that there were no officers patrolling the area when Salman Abedi made his final approach and then later detonated his explosive. The police watchdogs also recommended that the British Transport Police apologise to the families of the victims. And finally, in the US, world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has been charged with multiple offences. Court records there show that Scheffler had been booked on 4 charges, which included second-degree assault of a police officer. The Masters champion was handcuffed on his way to the PGA Championship this morning, but he was able to arrive on course in time for a tee-off in the second round of the event. He's described the arrest as a big misunderstanding following what he called a very chaotic situation. And we now know he has closed the day 5 under par, 2 shots behind the leader. That's the latest from the newsroom. Another update at 11 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Yeah, welcome along. So yesterday, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman went to Cambridge to try to engage with pro-Palestine squatters at the university, and she was met with a wall of silence.
What are you here protesting about?
Might not get a better opportunity than this to talk to
What's
someone.
your message to the Palestinian people? What's your message to Hamas? What's your message to Israel? Hi, I'm Suella. I'm keen to find out your views and what you're protesting about.
Nothing at all?
I'm really keen to hear what your message is to Israel.
No. Well, loads of people on Twitter piled in and said, oh, this is hilarious. They've blanked her because they wanted to mug her off, etc. Well, look, I will tell you why they don't really want to talk and why they wear masks. So most of those campers are not actually students at the university. The Revolutionary Communist Party and other far-left organisations set up a few tents and they send representatives to start these camps. They pretend to be students at universities and they hope that this will be the catalyst to spark a much bigger protest. Now, if they didn't wear masks, like this lot did, and they engaged more with the media, it will become pretty obvious pretty quickly that they aren't actually students at those universities and that the myth of a massive student rebellion will be shattered. So, here's another reason why they don't want to talk. I've been to a few of these demonstrations now, and the same thing happens every single time. 1 or 2 self-appointed group leaders follows us around, and other outlets, by the way. This is not just a GB News thing. If the BBC turned up and did that, they would have got the same response, I guarantee you. But anyway, they follow us around, telling every single person not to talk to us. So here's the evidence. This is what happened at Oxford. Quick chat with you about why you feel so strongly.
Why don't we speak? Sorry, I'm new here.
Well, do you want to talk, though? Because it's...
Yeah, I mean, they asked me not to.
Yep, this happened in Peckham.
Off GB News! Off GB News! Off GB News! Off GB News! off GB News. Just want to know.
Yeah, and this also happened to us outside Westminster.
Hang on a minute. This guy wanted to. But are you? You're fast. Go away. This guy wanted to talk. He approached me. He approached me. You know.
So people want to talk to you, or you are actively engaging with somebody, and then, you know, the usual types rock up and they get right involved. So they silence the crowd. So that happens everywhere you go, all right? So that is really one of the main reasons why they don't want to talk to you. But one thing that was interesting about this Cambridge demonstration was that some of the people telling the youngsters not to engage appeared to actually be members of staff. Now, one thing I will say about this is that you get caught in this kind of doom loop, right? So members of staff at this university tell all of the students there, do not engage, do not engage. And then when you go to them, they say, well, why don't you just ask the students what they think? Having obviously already told them, along with a few other people, not to talk to you. And we do have some footage of that.
Sorry, so I was serving as a staff observer, so we're here to ensure that the students' free speech rights are protected, so you should ask the students if you've got any questions.
So staff are actually involved in this then, are they?
Yes, I was serving as a staff observer.
OK, so do you support the process here?
I'm not answering any questions. You have to direct the questions to the students.
OK, but you are a member of staff?
Yes.
And you're here?
Yes.
Yes, so you end up in a situation where other people get involved and they don't want to talk to you. But this is hardly surprising, though, considering members of the academic staff at Cambridge were very vocal on Twitter about so-called students stonewalling Suella Braverman. Someone called Nicholas Guyat, I don't know who they are, they probably wrote a book once 20 years ago about the EU and now they're, you know, semi-famous. But anyway, congratulations to the students, faculty and passerby who ensured that when Suella Braverman came to Cambridge today, there was no one for her to talk to, save her GBNews handlers. Just FYI, we did not actually have any GBNews handlers. But anyway, I know for a fact that some people at Cambridge and other demonstrations did actually want to talk and did engage. You've seen a couple of examples in the clips there, but they're actually too scared to do so in case they upset militant camp leaders. Now, I actually know this, especially for a fact, because people there have told me, I've seen it with my own eyes, and because I received messages like the one I received yesterday whilst I was on the train back from Cambridge, which said this: "Hi, Patrick. I would not have wanted to speak for the encampment at the time, which has a respectable policy of asking media to contact them first before visiting, but happy to talk for myself. It was good to meet you too." Someone there who had the people from the encampment not been telling them not to talk would have been perfectly happy to have a conversation on camera, OK? But there is, of course, another major reason why they don't want anyone to engage with the media. It's because the second that you scratch the surface, it emerges that Israel might not have a right to exist. They won't condemn Hamas. They don't seem to care about women being raped on October the 7th, and they don't think the hostages should be released. Have a right to exist.
This is the wrong question that you're asking.
Well, OK. I think that's quite tough.
And should the hostages be released?
Listen, like, why is this conflict happening in the first place? Who is responsible for it?
It's easy to say yes to that.
Who is the responsible for it?
Do you believe women were raped on October the 7th by Hamas?
I believe there is a lot of violence taking place across that whole region.
The other thing, of course, is that it's not actually all about Palestine. A lot of it is about overthrowing capitalism. It is actually your main argument for you is you want to smash the capitalist system.
Absolutely, because capitalism produces war and produces imperialism, which fundamentally has been driving everything that's happened over the last 76 years. It isn't just about the last 7 months or anything like this.
But I would just point out, you know, your trainers, your bracelet, everything you're wearing, the coffee you had this morning, the car you drove in,
workers.
The car you drove in today are all products of capitalism.
OK, look, I just think that all of this is worth bearing in mind, especially when it comes to whether or not any business, institution or university should give in to these people's demands. If they do, they are not buckling under the weight of massive people power and human pressure. They are actually giving in to a few radicals, often pretending to be students, who are card-carrying communists that won't even acknowledge that women were raped on October the 7th. Is that who you really want to give in to? But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I'm joined by former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent. I have got entrepreneur, apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju, and Alex Armstrong as well, political commentator. Look, Alex, I'll start with you. You know, do you really think that people should be giving in to these kind of individuals? You know, they're not actually really who they say they are, like these people.
Yeah, well, you said it yourself, Patrick. There's people who, with deep political motivations, infiltrating these processes. When they don't just do it to this, they've done it at multiple protests over the course of time. We saw in the United States undercover journalists go into the camps, and they found extreme communist propaganda with words written up on the screen saying, "Crush the West," the US shouldn't exist, Israel shouldn't exist, UK shouldn't exist. And so what we're seeing is these paid activists from the Communist Party go in and make this situation 50 times worse. They're also, then pushing them to say ridiculous things about the attacks on Israel, saying that this is all propaganda and making them believe it with zero evidence. And the reason why they're not saying anything, these students, Patrick, and you said it yourself, is because when they do open their mouths, they come out with things that end up with their visa being cancelled.
Yeah,
Why do they need to be students in order to
they're saying it's a student protest.
Well, yeah, it's a student protest. Maybe you'll have students and then you have people that come along and support the students. It's not like it's just everybody kind of masquerading. At the end of the day, they're there to fight a cause that is to do with universities. It's to do with universities indirectly funding some of the weapons and some of the things that are killing Palestinians. So I think that it's about the wider cause rather than it saying, oh, show us your student card, in order to be able to protest outside of here.
I think it's maybe a slightly bigger question about are you who you say you are, really, is the thing. And it's one thing trying to portray that there is a small army of students, John, out there who are doing what students have done throughout history, which is, just engage in political things, have various protests, etc. But if actually what has happened is that essentially the Communist Party has pitched a few tents up outside and hoped that kickstarts some kind of American-style rally, well, then maybe the public should know about that.
No, I think everyone should know as much as they can about all these things. The real truth is that students don't know very much about politics. They have very strong feelings. They do want to protest, and they want to show those feelings, because it also sort of implies that they're growing up. They're becoming more mature, they're thinking about the world. But of course, real politics is full of dilemmas and difficulties and all sorts of ironies and things which, for a young person, they find it's quite difficult to cope with. The idea of, but if you're against Israel, can you just be against the Israeli government? Do you think Israel should exist? Oh, that's a bit tricky, isn't it? What to do about Hamas?
But they also help them coordinate, and I actually think that it's a good thing that they advise them not to speak to anybody.
No, it's not. Of course, it's absolutely not, Joanna. Come on.
It is a good
to say to students that you shouldn't exercise your freedom of speech because you might say something stupid is demeaning to them. But not only that, the problem is you'll get. Well, it is true, but then maybe they shouldn't be out protesting, John. Exactly. They shouldn't be out protesting. They don't know what they're talking about. What are you? We see people go to protests all the time. Do you know the meaning of intifada?
I'm sorry, but
if you're protesting, we don't know the meaning of intifada. You shouldn't be screaming calls for intifada. The reality is that they're living in an echo chamber and they're getting only communist propaganda, which is plaguing the minds of these young people, and it's radicalising them.
They'll grow up. If the ones who are interested in politics, who are really interested, they'll pass over this because they'll become more interested in the Middle East. They'll think, how did this happen? How can we improve the situation? Do there have to be two states? So Israel's got to exist. Where's that state going to be alongside a Palestinian state? Oh, that's tricky. But the more they understand it, their enthusiasm at the moment may turn out to be a mature interest in what to do.
Since when was there a rule to say that if you want to go out and protest and show your solidarity by just being present there as a human and holding up a flag, that some of the kind of rules is that you've got to speak to the media and
I understand that, but I think, I know really that the bigger concern there is that if they did open their mouths, what actually tumbles out of it is things like Israel doesn't have a right to exist, is things like there's no need for Hamas to release the hostages, and that actually is part of what this code of silence is from those organisers.
And frankly, look, and the lack of... The thing about these people coming in from the Communist Party and these other extreme organisations is that they're perpetuating these values onto these young people. And John's right, there's certain young people that will grow out of it, but there's many of them who will not take an active interest in politics after this. They won't learn about the system, and they won't learn how many tens of millions of people died under communism over the last
when they hit reality, and they're really in a position to say, what do we now do in this situation? We're in the government. Should the government do this? Protesting is one thing. Arguing and knowing is completely different.
Go on.
Well, I think that it's obviously such a contentious issue, and it always depends on which area somebody is coming from. Is somebody talking about, you know, does Israel have a right to defend itself after October 7th? Is somebody talking all the way back in the Nakba? And I think that some of these students recognise that they're not sophisticated enough to be able to conversate.
They shouldn't be there.
Why not?
Shouldn't be there because they don't understand the situation.
Certainly be allowed to protest.
Well, for sure, but don't go and start screaming into Parliament. You know what you're talking about.
Everyone's allowed to protest, and there may well be something one day that I feel so strongly enough that I will want to set up a tent outside a particular building, and I support everybody's right to do that. What I will say though is I think a lot of these people are pretending to be things that they're not, i.e. Cambridge students, and they're not. They're essentially hired in, right? I know that one of the main reasons why they're covering their faces is because they don't want to reveal their views. The other fact is that they are being told not to talk by these kind of radicals. And I just think when it's in the context of something I'm going to be talking about next, which is universities, institutions or politicians giving into these people, I think it's important to know exactly who they are and
then
what
they have a spokesperson that will be able to communicate that properly. Do we have time for me to ask you a question?
Yeah.
I just want to ask, in these contexts, and when we've got the protests and when you've got Suella in the interview, why is it that we only ask the person who is pro-Palestinian, you know, what they think of Hamas? Should Israel have a right to exist?
Because she was there to have a conversation with those people, and they didn't want to talk. They could have, any one of those 50 people also that were there could have asked. If you were there, you'd have asked her that. This is the thing, Joanna. Be honest about it, right? If you were there, that would have been great. And she wouldn't have got a gotcha moment out of you because you're super intelligent, you know exactly what you're on about, you're capable of handling yourself in any situation. It wouldn't have been some kind of ridiculous gotcha. You would have just had a great conversation
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that broader, and I'm not just talking about that specific interview, I'm talking about in the context of when we have one pro-Palestinian and one pro-Israeli person, why is it that we're always trying to hammer that question out of them of what they think about Hamas and what they think about if Israel has a right to exist? Earlier on, I was talking about the fact that senior members of the Israeli government have literally said that they don't, you know, acknowledge a Palestinian statehood. For some people, that is also extreme.
Joanna, those people aren't here in the UK. There's not a campment of Israeli people camped outside of Parliament and universities. So they're getting more airtime and more conversations.
Sorry, there's been Israeli protests
but they're not the ones doing it.
Look, I'm sorry. I am.
You'll never know what I was going to say.
Well, I will, because I think we've got a feeling we'll crowbar it in later, John. All right, look. OK, coming up. Brawl and order, OK. It really kicked off in the Taiwanese parliament earlier today. I'll tell you what caused that. I know, it's mad. Anyway, right, more of that and all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages very, very shortly. But first, this is going to be interesting. So Cambridge University students, as we were hearing, were left devastated after graduation ceremonies were moved because of some of those protests that we brought to you yesterday. I visited that camp with Suella Braverman. We obviously got a cheery welcome, as everybody knows, didn't we? You know, when you tell your friends later that you had an opportunity to talk to Suella and they say, what did you do? And you turned your back. Yes, but that particular camp is quite interesting, and I'm going to be joined by a University of Cambridge professor and quite an outspoken critic, James Orr, and possibly a student themselves as well. So stay tuned.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting, or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News, a very first look at all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, graduating students at Cambridge University have been left devastated after this weekend's ceremonies were moved because of the pro-Palestine protests. If you can even call them that, by the way. There's about 8 tents full of people who I'm convinced don't even go to the university. Anyway, we've done that. Cambridge's graduation ceremonies have taken place at Senate House since the 18th century. But this pro-Palestine camp on the lawn outside the building has put paid to that tradition. So alongside the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, I had the pleasure of visiting this camp yesterday. Can I just say, this is the scale of the camp that has apparently brought Cambridge University to its knees.
Your message to Israel? No response.
I just wonder, you know, when you tell your friends later that you had an opportunity to talk to Suella and they say, what did you do? And you turned your back. It says it's a liberated zone, so I don't know if you can see the sign there.
Liberated zone.
A sign there that says liberated zone.
Right, OK. Interesting. This is their idea of liberation.
Presumably.
Standing in the rain, getting wet, masks on, balaclavas.
Right, so Cambridge for Palestine, the group supposedly running these protests, have now agreed to move their camp away from Senate House after the university caved in and agreed to negotiate with them. But that didn't come soon enough for today and tomorrow's graduation ceremonies, which have apparently been moved to an undisclosed location. Now, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by the Associate Professor of Philosophy of Religion at the University of Cambridge, James Orr, and Oliver Howes, who is a graduating economics student at the university. Both of you, thank you very, very much. I will start with Oliver, if that's OK, possibly slightly more directly relevant to you, my good man, in this case. How do you feel about the possibility, then, that your graduation might be moved because of some of these camps or these tents? What do you make of it?
I mean, so I'm expecting to graduate in a month's time at Senate House. I don't know exactly whether I'll be able to do so. I mean, you spoke earlier on about how these professional protesters failed to condemn Hamas. I actually think it's far, far worse than that in many cases. They're leading chants of up the liberation. Senate House, where I hope to graduate in a month, they renamed Rafat's house after Rafat al-Hariya, who they portray as just some noble and martyred Palestinian poet who actually mocked the victims of October the 7th, celebrated the attacks on October the 7th. So over the sign of Senate House, we instead had Rafat's house. So it's not just a case of failure to condemn Hamas, it's worse. It's in many cases open support, and this may well very much impact my graduation.
All right, really, really revealing. So I'm going to come back to you, Oliver. James, I'll bring you in. Thank you very much for giving us your time tonight. I couldn't help but notice that there were a few of your colleagues yesterday who seems to be quite supportive of what was going on. How does that make you feel? Is that a concern, and especially to see that the university is in some way actually giving in to these people?
Well, good to be with you, Patrick. Look, feelings run very high on this issue, as they do on many other issues, and I suspect my own issues are probably, my own position on these issues is very much in a minority among colleagues. But that's not really the question. I mean, the question is, are we free to express these views? Are these students free to protest and express their views? And my view is absolutely. It's a sacrosanct right for them to be able to express their position. It was very sad yesterday that, you know, after a lot of battling over free speech in Cambridge over the last 3 or 4 years, that when given the right to express themselves freely, they decided not to say anything at all. But look, that's up to them. I think the concern here with the ceremonies, the shifting of the ceremonies, I mean, I think that crosses a line, in my view. I mean, there are certain obvious limits to freedom of speech within the university. Criminal damage, threatening and offensive behavior, threatening behavior, violent behavior is obviously included in that. But also, I think major disruptions to the life and working of the universities. And I think, you know, graduation day, the most important event in the life in the life of any student, friends and families flying in from all across the world, coming in from all across the country. That is something I think that would count as an appropriate limit on the protests. If the protests were protests at a degree ceremony, for example, that, in my view, should be okay. That is something that the university should tolerate and permit, even if many of us find the views that are being expressed ignorant and offensive. The other concern I have, Patrick, is this idea that the university is entering into negotiations with these protesters, and the idea that it might be making concessions, the idea that it might be divesting from companies connected to Israel. Now, that seems to me to compromise very seriously the principle of institutional neutrality. The University of Cambridge should have no political views about anything, especially not an issue as contentious as the Israel-Gaza war.
OK, Oliver, can I just ask you on a personal level? Look, you don't, ironically, with the possible exception of some of the people who are at these protests, by the way, you don't just wander into Cambridge University, right? You must have worked incredibly hard your entire life, be a very intelligent chap, and have no doubt done very, very well over the course of your academic tenure at Cambridge. And right at the end of it, when you are, graduating in the coming weeks or whenever it is, this particular incident could be marring it. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's less than ideal. As Professor Orr said, I wholeheartedly support the rights of these students to protest. But again, when it's ruining the graduation day of the postgraduate students who graduated today and those who will graduate tomorrow, it oversteps the line very much. And again, as has been mentioned, people flying in from overseas, that's not the case for me, but my parents will have to be making a, several 100-mile car journey, and I'd hope for them to experience graduation at Senate House as opposed to at some other location as a result of protesters deciding that their view on the conflict is the only possible right view and holding the rest of the university to ransom.
And just before I go back to James for the final word on this, Oliver, could I ask you, how has this impacted, or how have the views of some of the people at the moment, some of these protesters at the university, affected you or people you know, or dare I say it, I don't know, maybe Jewish students, for example, who are more pro-Israel? But what's the kind of impact been there, and the social impact?
I mean, I can't and I wouldn't want to speak for anyone other than myself. But there's been a lot of chanting of things which, in my opinion, are completely unacceptable, completely delegitimise any kind of debate on the issue, completely delegitimise the state of Israel as a construct, and a lot of the time they refuse to have they refuse to acknowledge any Zionism, which isn't even just a case of Jewish Israelis. The 20% of Israel's population that are Arab Israelis are also seen as dispensing.
So it's difficult stuff. Look, James, we are going to have to be relatively quick about this, I'm afraid, Magaman. But as somebody who is working at that university, who is at that university, what would your message be to some of your colleagues who are actually endorsing this stuff?
Well, my message to colleagues who are endorsing this stuff is really to endorse away. You're free to express your views, provided you do it in a way that it isn't inciting violence or isn't creating a threatening and intimidating atmosphere on campus. That's absolutely fine. But where protest tips into major disruptions to the life of the university, that is something that we should resist at all costs, and we should model at a place like the University of Cambridge how free speech should be conducted and what the proper limits are for the rest of the sector to the extent that we can.
OK. Both of you, look, thank you very, very much. I do hope to chat to both of you again soon. And Oliver, good luck with your graduation and whatever awaits next. All right, take care, both of you. It's Oliver Howes, a graduating economics student at the University of Cambridge, and, of course, the Associate Professor of Philosophy of Religion at the University of Cambridge, James Orr. Great stuff. Now, well, when I come back, I'm going to be giving you the very first of tomorrow's front pages, but Gobby Gary Lineker has piped up again as well.
It's just the lack of empathy that I find hard to believe for people that have. Imagine how desperate things have got to be to jump in a dinghy.
Ah, yes, all right. Find out exactly what he's banging on about shortly. And yes, I will be giving you all of the front pages as well. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells, a fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up, and we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland, likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours continuing into the evening, dying away overnight. So a dry start to the day on Sunday. A lot of cloud first thing, particularly in the north and the east. But quickly, there are some very pleasant, warm, sunny spells developing through the morning and into the afternoon. Again, there'll be showers, but they're most likely to focus towards the southwest. Similar conditions on Monday.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. It's time for tomorrow's front pages. Let's do it. All right, we start with the eye. Benefit system insiders reveal how targets are used to decide disability claims. OK, I mean, is this a story they use targets to decide disability claims? Yeah, that's how it should be, probably. Anyway, The Guardian revealed alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. The cost of alcohol abuse is laid bare in a new study that shows £27 billion a year spent in England on the health and social harms of drinking. Hey, look, I can only apologise. All right, I can only apologise. The Daily Express, King's fighting spirit. He will lead D-Day tributes. Good stuff. Well, displaying an indomitable spirit, the King will fulfil his duty and lead tributes in France to mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. Good stuff. I seem to remember a little while back when the French didn't want to invite us to a D-Day memorial, and now here we are. The Times, protection for teachers' free speech on religion. Push for change after protests and death threats. So teachers will be given protection from blasphemy claims. This is going to be a big story, actually. There's probably one for the later show tonight, I imagine. But legal guarantees upholding teachers' rights. From my understanding of this is to try to make sure something like the Batley Grammar School incident doesn't happen again. There's also that picture of, sadly, one of the hostages, the Israeli hostages found. The body was found. Right, OK, so those are some of your front pages, for now anyway. I am joined, of course, by my wonderful press pack. We've got former BBC and ITV political chief John Sargent, political commentator, apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju, and political commentator as well, Alex Armstrong. Now, I'm just going to whiz it on to a big story that isn't going away anytime soon, and it's residents in Devon being told by South West Water to boil their tap water because it's infested with a diarrhoea-causing parasite, which is apparently called Cryptosporidium, which does sound a little bit to me like something you might invest in, but apparently not. Unfortunately, for the people who drank the parasite-ridden water, around 46 have been taken ill, 16,000 households of business. Basically, people have got awful, awful conditions. I'm a bit sick of these water companies, John.
Yeah, no, I'm sick
of them.
I mean, we don't live there, we're not drinking that water, so we don't be that sick.
Yeah.
But no, it is extraordinary, isn't it? And you just feel that right at the heart of this, a very simple point about separating water, rainwater, from sewage water. And if you don't be surprised if at some point, whether it's in the rivers, whether it's in the lakes, whether it's in the drinking water, things go wrong, because they're simply not physically separated. Now, if you say it would cost billions, of course it would cost billions, but could we at least start getting on with all this?
No, I agree. I actually, seriously, I think this is... And you see things as well. I've got, I declare an interest in this. I used to live in the Lake District. It's a beautiful part of the world. The idea that raw sewage is being pumped into Windermere, for goodness sake.
Well, I'm the president of the Arthur Ransom Society, so speaking as a president... At last, a position, right?
Oh, God.
Something powerful in the Lake District.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, all that Windermere story is just so distressing.
It's awful. It's awful. And what do we do about this, Joanna? What do we do?
Hold them to account and also renationalise water. I don't think that there's been any bigger advert at the moment for doing that. It's not even now some sort of left-wing type of ideological fantasy. It's literally people are getting sick from this. And the cheek of them also to say, oh, we'll give you 15 quid. Mad, we'll give you 100 quid. Are you joking me? You have literally, you basically signed a contract to say that you will keep me safe, that if I turn my tap on, that I expect not to be puking up.
This is the kind of thing that when people you know, used to go abroad to farm, it was like, oh, don't drink the tap water.
Yeah.
Well, it's Devon now, apparently. I mean, there is, I think, a case for nationalising the waterways.
Yeah, you know, I actually completely agree with Joanna. I think we should start renationalising. Yeah, I know. Well, look at that.
Yeah.
We should start renationalising these key industries, because if privatisations fail, the cost of these companies goes up and up and up every year, and the service is clearly worse, and they're not doing their job. They should be prosecuted. These
it's also just it's very offensive to all of us that they earn so much money. It
is.
Not just a bit more than the rest of us, but 10, 20, 100 times more than us.
Yeah.
And you just think, wait a moment, what are they doing? They're messing things up.
No, they are. I actually just seriously think this is one thing, possibly more than that really unites people. And I think the tap water thing is, I know maybe the final straw should have been, you know, the local river being pumped full of sewage, or people getting sick from swimming in the sea. I get all of that stuff, or maybe some of the lakes. I think when you turn your bloody tap on, and you know,
and this young woman's in hospital for 3 weeks.
It's
She
40
can't
people
settle
now.
because she can't move one way or the other way. Her mother complains about it. Goodness me.
It's 40 people now, John. 40.
Yeah, no, it's not on, and there's no accountability, and I think they lie about it initially as well, which is always a problem, where they say, oh no, there's nothing wrong, and then more people get sick. You've got people driving to car parks to get water. Sorry, it's got to stop. It's not good, and it's costing us a load of money. And no, we shouldn't bail them out. We should hold people to account, make them pay things back. Now, things got pretty heated in the Taiwanese parliament earlier today as lawmakers battled it out, quite literally, in a bitter dispute about reforms to the chamber. Shall we have a little look?
我们3点半继续。 排长插队了，口水那么多，你干什么？你打人哦！口水那么多，你打人哦！
So that was a fight, apparently, about whether or not, like, lawmakers should have more power over the government. I think possibly yes. By the looks of it. I
don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway, all right, I've got more of tomorrow newspapers front pages next, actually. So, look, make sure you stay tuned, and I will keep you bang up to date, all right?
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, I'm not allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is, and I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, she's doing well, thanks.
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So
It does.
We wish her
What's
very, very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just like saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. The people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know who I
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him
3
to go.
miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I've got more front pages for you. Let's do it. The Independent. Chinese opioid epidemic killing 6 a week in the UK. This is a super-strength synthetic drug, up to 500 times stronger than morphine, apparently. It's gripping Britain's streets. They've also got the picture story there of golf champion Scheffler plays on after this bonkers. Oh, he's arrested for, well, they say assaulting police. Anyway, let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Landlords face rent caps under Labour. Shadow Chancellor says there may be a case for enforcing local limits. NHS secrecy must end, as well as another story there. So, yeah, no, this is interesting, a little one here. Funeral scandal spreads across UK. Now, do you remember a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, some issue, some weird issue going on at a funeral home somewhere? Anyway, funeral homes across the country are now being investigated for mistreating the dead. Apparently there's a Wild West industry that needs to be regulated. 6 police forces are investigating allegations that bodies have been stored in self-storage units, left to decompose. I mean, it is Friday night. I think you might have finished having your dinner now, but we will leave that there. The Daily Mail. Hunt warns families face £2,100 bill to pay for Labour spending. Quite an interesting tactic from Jeremy Hunt today. He stood in front of a sign that said Labour tax hikes. As opposed to, you know, normally they tell you what the Tories are going to do or they tell you what the 5-point plan is. That one, you know, so Jeremy Hunt is now pictured in front of signs saying Labour tax hikes, and it's emphasised by the Daily Mail. There's also that story about this teacher facing jail for sleeping with 2 pupils. Let's go to the Mirror. Baby, you're a rich man too. Sunak's wealth up 120 million. Can I just say, I think actually this is really misogynistic. It's his wife's wealth that's up 120 million. Although, to be fair, it is because she's essentially invested in her dad's company, but there we go. Anyway, and there's some stuff about Paul McCartney also being wadded, so good for them. Really good for them. All right, I'm joined again by my press pack. We know who they are. It's John Sargent, it's Joanna Jarju, it's Alex Armstrong. Now, look, while ordinary Brits are forking up millions of pounds a day to house asylum seekers, some lucky so-and-so is raking it in. He's found himself on the Sunday Times rich list that we were just hearing about. This is hotel-owning tycoon Graham King, who makes, are you ready for this, £3.5 million a day from taxpayers' cash to accommodate migrant arrivals, their food, etc. He's got a personal fortune now, £750 million. Alex, I'll start with you. Is he a great businessman or is he selling Britain out?
Well, he's definitely selling Britain out. Funnily enough, Patrick, me and you covered this topic last year. Yeah. And what struck me about this is his daughter. His daughter's making pictures that say, we'll sell race for £10, we'll sell racists for refugees. And, you know, these are the kind of people, clearly, obviously, she's benefiting from people coming to this country massively, and the homes that he's putting people in are apparently dreadful. So, you know, quite frankly, whilst I'd love a bit of British entrepreneurialism, this bloke is
It's quite funny. I spoke to the bloke earlier today who composes the rich list, right? And he says that, so they reach out to people. I said this guy wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. Hasn't responded to any emails. Nothing. It doesn't. I mean, he'll probably hate the fact that his face is everywhere. But you know, he's got 3.5 million reasons every single day to carry on doing it. You're a businesswoman. You're an entrepreneur. What do you make of this?
As the resident lefty, I can't believe I'm saying this, but
No, Joanna, no, don't say it.
I don't see anything that wrong about it from his perspective. Obviously, it stings from the public. It's coming from our purse. Obviously, he's making a killing out of it. But really, it's misdirected anger, as usual. It's the government. This is a public contract. I would have a problem with this if he was one of the minister's mates and if it was more Tory sleaze, then fine. But really, technically, he's not doing anything wrong. And actually, if the accommodation isn't up to par, then it's, again, the government's fault. Why they're not scrutinising more? Why they're not opening it more to the market?
I honestly bet he can't believe his luck. He was something like a taxi firm owner at Essex way. I can't remember.
You're commercialising something that is deeply wrong, right? And I think that's the problem. It's moral capitalism. Which, Joanna, come on, this is I'm doing your lines here, aren't I?
It's the government's fault.
What have we been drinking in the green room?
No, but it's the government's fault. It's them that are like.
For sure,
it's just another public contract. You know, it's the same with the NHS and other things.
Very quickly, John.
I know. Look, the government allowed this to happen. Of course, they should take the blame, but he takes the blame too. After the war, we called these people profiteers.
Profiteers. Right, OK, now we're going to have to be very quick here. So Gary Lineker appeared on Ruth Rogers' Table 4 podcast, me neither, to have another pop at the government over not teaching cookery in schools. But he also used the opportunity to, yet again, shame those who don't want an open border policy. Here's some Gary Lineker.
It's just the lack of empathy that I find hard to believe for people that have... Imagine how desperate things have got to be to you know, jump in a dinghy and risk your life and your life of your children to seek kind of sanctuary somewhere. and then not to be well received, and it's I find it hard to understand, and I think it's incomprehensible that you. I understand some people don't have any empathy at all for anyone.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he doesn't actually find it hard to understand. He's being deliberately disingenuous there, but, you know, it is Gary Lineker. Anyway, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. John, who is your greatest Britain, please?
The greatest Britain, Alan Bates again, right? He's the post office guy, but what I like is he's turned down the latest post office offer. Now, the reason why that's important is it means the fame he now has not gone to his head. He's actually still continuing to try and make sure that the people who suffered because of this terrible scandal should be properly recompensed.
OK, go on, John.
Mine is the brilliant guest that you had yesterday that was having a head-to-head with Suella Braverman, Fiona Laley. I think that she held her to account, and actually, I think she was running rings around her at some point. So, greatest Britain for sure.
Go on, Alex.
Well, in complete contrast, mine's Suella Braverman. It's a rematch for the. It's a rematch for the ages. For taking on, of course,
right.
and walking with you through
it. Well, look, as one would expect, of course, today's winner is Suella Braverman. But there we go. But I did think that Fiona was exceptional yesterday. I didn't agree with anything she had to say, but for coming on and saying what she said, certainly took some guts. I think Suella's slightly hamstrung by the fact that she has to be more polite than she maybe wanted to. But anyway, right, sorry, John, very quickly, go on, here's Union Jackass.
OK, we're back to the water companies. Liz Garfield, she's a Severn Trent boss who's defending her multi-million pound pay packet, despite sewage spills by her company rising by a third in the past year.
Yeah, ridiculous. Go on, John.
Mine is royal biographer and journalist Christopher Wilson. He put out a tweet after Meghan and Harry's trip to Nigeria, basically comparing them to Wallis Simpson and her husband, who abdicated the throne, going to visit Nazi Germany, and saying that Nigeria was basically not far short from Nazi Germany. Absolutely ridiculous.
OK. Well, all right, Alex. You might have won, actually, if you put it forward. Rebecca Joines, of course, is mine. She is the woman that has slept with one underage boy, a 15-year-old, and a 16-year-old pupils of hers. Pretty disgraceful person.
Yeah, and actually, I think it would be much more outrage about this, can I just say, if this was a male teacher. But anyway, right, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Rebecca Joines. So there we go. Right, thank you. Great show. And thank you, everybody who's been watching and listening, not just tonight, but throughout the course of the week. It's Headliners next. I'll see you on Monday at 9 p.m. Have a great weekend.
A brighter outlook with Bob Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of warm, sunny spells this weekend, but it won't be sunny or indeed dry everywhere. There'll be some cloud development, there'll be some showers here and there. We're in between high pressure and low pressure at the moment. Weather fronts are tending to stay away, but there is a feature that's been bringing some heavy rain to Germany over the last couple of days, and that's just going to swing some cloud and outbreaks of rain into the far southeast and East Anglia overnight. And there'll be some low cloud drifting into eastern Scotland, northeast England. So grotty conditions first thing here on Saturday. Otherwise, further west, plenty of sunny spells, a fresh start, but soon enough, where we've got the sunshine, it will warm up quickly. Where we've got the low cloud, it's going to be slower to warm up, and we will have some showery rain first thing along the south coast into Kent, South Wales, perhaps into southwest as the morning goes on. Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland, plenty of warm sunshine, but northeast England into eastern Scotland, low cloud and mist. Northern Scotland, likewise. That will take some time through the morning to burn back to the beaches. Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud first thing. That will tend to break up and allow some sunny spells to come through as the day goes on. So, for the majority, it is looking like a fine day. There'll be some decent sunny spells, but there'll also be showers developing as temperatures rise. The odd shower for Wales, central and northern England, central Scotland as well, particularly over the Highlands. But the most frequent showers are likely towards the southwest. Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Somerset could see some heavy downpours.
You really could could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full